why spiritually awakened people are untouchable. He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens. Carl Jung. This timeless truth lies at the heart of today's message. On Spiritual Wisdom, we're diving into why spiritually awakened people become untouchable, not because they avoid life's chaos, but because they've learned to master their inner world. As you watch, reflect on your own spiritual journey. What makes you resilient? What inner strength keeps you grounded? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear how you're applying these insights in your daily life to grow and thrive. 1. True power is inner stillness amid chaos. Spiritually awakened people are not immune to life's storms. They've simply learned how to weather them without being internally destroyed. While others react, spiral, or collapse, the awakened stand like ancient mountains. The winds of judgment may howl, rejection may strike like lightning, and chaos may swirl in every direction, yet their soul remains unmoved. This strength is not born of ignorance or denial, but of deep, conscious presence. It is the result of doing the inner work, confronting trauma, peeling back illusions, integrating the shadow, and stepping fully into their spiritual identity. They are not numb, they are awake. They do not escape pain, they have befriended it. Because of this, the storm passes through them, but it never defines them. Carl Jung understood this rare power when he said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." The spiritually untouchable have stopped outsourcing their stability to things they cannot control. Their power no longer hinges on the approval of others, the predictability of life, or the outcomes they once obsessed over. They have taken back the reins from their ego and handed them to their soul. And once the soul leads, chaos loses its grip. These people are not reactionary. They are intentional. They no longer beg for peace from the outside world because they've built an entire sanctuary within. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's mastery. Their stillness isn't weakness, it's clarity. And their calm in the middle of chaos isn't luck, it's a spiritual frequency they chose to embody through fire. They have faced betrayal and chosen healing over revenge. They have encountered loss and chosen surrender over bitterness. They have walked through loneliness and transformed it into solitude. Their strength is invisible to those who only understand dominance, noise, and power games. But those with eyes to see will feel the difference. You cannot manipulate a soul that knows its worth. You cannot destabilize someone who has faced the abyss and chosen to rise. You cannot control someone who has nothing to prove and no desire to perform. The spiritually untouchable are not hard, they are whole. And wholeness doesn't shatter, it expands. This level of being is not reserved for a chosen few. It is available to anyone willing to go deep enough, anyone willing to stop running and start listening to their wounds, their intuition, their soul. Because the truth is, stillness is not the absence of movement. It's the presence of rootedness. It's the fierce clarity that remains even as everything else changes. And in that stillness, in that quiet power, the world may rage, but it can never reach the core. Have you ever faced chaos and remained completely still inside? If yes, share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else. If not, simply comment, "I will find my stillness," and let's walk this path of inner power together. 2. Power lies in awareness, not external control. Carl Jung taught that the outer world only has power over you because you surrender your awareness to it. When you stop giving your attention, your peace, your self-worth to external noise, you take back something far more powerful than control. You reclaim sovereignty over your soul. The spiritually awakened don't seek dominance over others. They seek freedom from the need to be validated, understood, or accepted. They don't waste energy chasing applause or avoiding criticism. They've outgrown the illusion that their value depends on external opinion. Instead, they master the only thing that truly belongs to them, their inner world. And that's why they are untouchable. They can walk into chaos and remain centered. They can be lied about, rejected, or misunderstood and still move with grace, because their worth isn't on trial anymore. I knew a man who lost his job, his marriage, and his health in the span of 1 year. Everything that once defined him vanished. But instead of collapsing, he turned inward. He started journaling. He began reading Carl Jung, meditating every morning, questioning every identity he used to cling to. And over time, something shifted. He stopped seeing himself as a victim of life and started seeing himself as a participant in a sacred process. He realized that every loss had stripped away something false, something that wasn't truly his. When he finally returned to the world, he didn't come back desperate to prove himself. He walked differently, spoke slower, didn't need to be liked. There was a calm authority about him that made people pause. He became a mirror for others, reflecting not what they wanted to see, but what they needed to face. That's the essence of spiritual awakening. You stop living to be accepted, and you start living from a place of truth. Carl Jung believed that transformation isn't about becoming something new, but remembering what you've always been. You don't need to fight the world when you're no longer at war with yourself. And that's where real power lives, not in controlling others, but in mastering your own reactions, your thoughts, your focus. When you learn to stay rooted even when storms come, when you refuse to let others decide how you feel about yourself, you become immune to manipulation. You stop being a puppet on emotional strings. This doesn't mean you're cold or disconnected. In fact, it's the opposite. You become deeply present, fully alive, and compassionately aware. But nothing owns you anymore. Your soul belongs to you again. And that quiet, unwavering clarity is what makes the awakened so rare, so powerful, and so deeply untouchable. Did this message resonate with you? If so, comment, "I reclaim my power," below to affirm your awareness, and let's keep growing together on this inner journey. 3. The shadow holds the key to liberation. Carl Jung taught that what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. And nowhere is this more true than with the shadow of the hidden self that lives beneath your surface, carrying your unspoken fears, suppressed rage, forgotten wounds, and repressed desires. The shadow is not your enemy, it's your mirror. Most people live their lives in fear of what they might find if they look too deeply into themselves. They numb, they distract, they blame others, because facing their own pain feels unbearable. But spiritually awakened people take a different path. They stop running, they turn inward, they sit with the discomfort. They recognize that true spiritual growth does not come from pretending to be good, but from integrating what is broken, unwanted, and unloved within. And in that integration, they find a power that cannot be shaken. You don't need to be perfect to be free. You need to be whole. And wholeness only comes when you embrace the parts of yourself that you were once taught to hide. When you bring your shadow into the light, something extraordinary happens. The pain you feared becomes your teacher. The anger you buried becomes your boundary. The fear you silenced becomes your intuition. What once seemed like weakness transforms into strength because it is no longer controlling you from the dark. Spiritually awakened people become untouchable, not because they are emotionally numb, but because they are emotionally sovereign. They have walked through their inner hell and returned wiser, calmer, and more grounded. They no longer react impulsively when triggered, because they understand the root of those triggers. They don't project their wounds onto others, because they've already met those wounds with compassion. When someone tries to manipulate them using guilt or shame, it doesn't work, because they've reclaimed those parts of themselves and no longer hand over their power. In modern life, this transformation might look like choosing silence over drama, understanding over judgment, or presence over performance. Imagine someone tries to insult you, push your buttons, make you doubt yourself, but you've already faced that critical voice within and dismantled it. Their words slide off like water. That is the mark of someone who has integrated their shadow. They are no longer fighting their own reflection, and so no external enemy can win. As Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The spiritually awakened stop calling it fate, they start calling it choice. And this choice is made every day. To pause instead of lash out, to reflect instead of react, to heal instead of blame. Shadow work is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong devotion to truth, a commitment to peeling back the layers of illusion until all that remains is the raw, radiant soul. Spiritual liberation is not about detachment from the world. It's about connection to yourself. When you no longer fear your shadow, you begin to live without masks. You stop seeking external validation because your worth is no longer conditional. You walk into rooms not needing to prove anything because your energy already speaks for you. That energy, the one shaped by truth, grounded in self-knowledge and rooted in spiritual awareness, is what makes you untouchable. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. And the more you align, the more others feel it. They can't define you, label you, or confine you because you've already done the sacred work of defining yourself. This is the power of shadow integration. It doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how the world sees you. 4. Becoming whole makes you untouchable. When you embrace both your light and your shadow, you stop being at war with yourself, and that inner peace makes you immune to the chaos of the world. True spiritual awakening is not about escaping the darkness, but integrating it, learning from it, and allowing it to deepen your soul. You become whole not by denying your pain, but by facing it with courage and compassion. Carl Jung taught us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's not just a quote, it's a revelation. Because until you sit with your wounds, they will control you. But when you heal them, when you transform unconscious patterns into conscious awareness, you reclaim your power. You no longer respond out of fear, trauma, or the need for validation. You act from alignment, from soul clarity, from a space that cannot be manipulated. And that's what makes you untouchable, not because you avoid conflict, but because conflict no longer decides who you are. The world loses its grip on you the moment you stop needing it to understand you. You no longer shrink to fit into places that dishonor your spirit. You stop over-explaining your truth to those committed to misunderstanding it. People may still project their wounds onto you, but you won't absorb them. Their judgments become background noise to your inner knowing. You hold space for them without losing yourself in their storm. That's real power, the kind of power that doesn't dominate, but simply refuses to be shaken. When your soul becomes your home, external approval becomes irrelevant. You walk into rooms differently. You speak less, but your presence says everything. You stop reacting to the world, and instead, you begin shaping it with your energy, your boundaries, and your vision. You become a lighthouse not by force, but by radiating light from the depth of your being. And those who haven't yet met their own darkness will feel unsettled by your calm, because your stillness reflects the inner noise they haven't yet faced. But that's not your burden to carry. Your path is sacred. It's the path of individuation, the spiritual journey of becoming a whole soul. Not perfect, but present. Not always understood, but deeply rooted. This is the transformation Jung pointed to, the evolution from a fragmented self into a unified one. And once you become whole, no storm, no rejection, no betrayal can dismantle you, because you no longer depend on the external to confirm the internal. Your value is not up for negotiation. Your peace is not available for purchase. You've met the darkest parts of yourself and chosen to love them back into the light. That's why nothing can control you anymore. Not people, not fear, not even your past. You become the observer, not the prisoner. You become the alchemist, not the victim. You move through the world grounded, knowing your soul is your compass, and as long as you follow it, you remain untouchable. If you found these insights meaningful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments below. Let's keep uncovering the power that comes from embracing your whole self. 5. 3 practical steps to build inner strength. Carl Jung once said that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration, by seeing, holding, and transforming all that you are. That's exactly what spiritual strength is, not the absence of pain, but the presence of awareness. The first step in cultivating this strength is to become the observer. Instead of reacting blindly when life throws you into emotional chaos, pause, breathe deeply. Ask yourself, what within me is being touched? This moment of stillness is sacred. It's where your soul speaks louder than your wounds. Visualization can help. Imagine a clear space within your mind where you are untouched by judgment or fear. This isn't about escaping your feelings, but witnessing them without drowning. The chaos around you can only consume you if it finds chaos within you. When you create this internal space, even the loudest storms lose their power over you. Observation turns you from a victim of emotion into a conscious participant in your own evolution. But observation must lead to rootedness. This is where the second step comes in, strengthening your inner core. In a world that constantly tells you who to be, the most powerful act is to define yourself. Write down what you believe in, what you value, what you stand for no matter what. This personal manifesto becomes your spiritual anchor. When others project their fears or judgments onto you, you no longer bend or shrink. You remain centered, because you are aligned with your truth. Carl Jung emphasized individuation, the process of becoming uniquely and fully yourself, as the highest task of the soul. Without it, we live in fragments, forever seeking validation. With it, we walk in silent power. Your identity isn't found in roles or titles, but in the quiet knowing of your worth. Just as a tree is not weakened by the storm when its roots go deep, you too become unshakable when rooted in authenticity. And yet, even the most grounded soul must face pain. The third step is the alchemical work of transforming negative energy. Every emotion, no matter how painful, contains sacred data. When you are hurt, journal the experience, not just the event, but the feelings, the reactions, the stories it triggered. Ask yourself, what is the wisdom here? Instead of labeling anger or grief as weakness, treat them as messages from the soul asking to be heard. Carl Jung taught that the path to light leads through the shadow, not around it. Enlightenment isn't about pretending you're above emotion, it's about integrating it consciously. When you learn to reframe your pain as an invitation to grow, you no longer run from it, you use it. And this daily practice of emotional transmutation becomes your spiritual discipline. You're no longer reacting, you're remembering who you are beneath every trigger, beneath every wound. In truth, spiritual strength is a quiet force. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to prove. It observes. It anchors. It transforms. It allows you to walk through a world of chaos untouched, not because you've escaped pain, but because you've made peace with it. This is the essence of becoming untouchable, not by armor, but by soul. As you take these 3 practical steps to build inner strength, remember every moment of self-awareness is a step toward emotional mastery. If you're ready to rise above reaction and anchor into your true power, comment below. I'm building my strength from within. Your presence here shows your commitment to growth. Let's continue walking this path together. 6. Jung's hidden philosophy, psychological freedom. Carl Jung's hidden philosophy reveals a spiritual truth that is both radical and liberating. Real psychological freedom doesn't come from controlling the world outside. It comes from aligning so deeply with your soul that the noise of the world no longer defines you. Spiritually awakened people are not immune because they're detached or indifferent, but because they've returned to the deepest parts of themselves, to their truth, and to a state of inner integration. Jung didn't teach escape, he taught wholeness. He believed that when we confront our shadows, our fears, our buried wounds, and integrate them rather than run from them, we reclaim the fragmented parts of the self that make us whole. That's the spiritual path, not one of perfection, but of authenticity. As Jung said, I'd rather be whole than good. Wholeness means you become untouchable, not because you don't feel, but because you no longer fall apart. The moment you begin to walk in alignment with your soul, your energy shifts. You are no longer controlled by opinions, by rejection, by praise, or by expectation. You respond rather than react. You listen without needing to defend. You observe without absorbing every emotion around you. And this is what makes spiritually awakened people so powerful. They operate from a center within, not from chaos without. In a world addicted to attention and validation, their quiet confidence unsettles others. While most people chase approval to feel worthy, they've already found their worth in their own spiritual essence. This makes them resistant to manipulation, immune to gaslighting, and sovereign in how they protect their peace. The storms may still come, but the storm no longer lives inside them. You see it in their eyes, calm, clear, unbothered. You hear it in their voice, measured, grounded, free of the need to convince. Their aura feels like still water, undisturbed by external splashes. And it's not because life has been easy, but because they've done the inner work to face the fires and rise from the ashes. When the world tried to tell them who they should be, they chose to remember who they really are. That remembering, that sacred return, makes them untouchable, not in ego, but in soul. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's not resistance, it's transcendence. And when you get to that place, you don't just survive chaos, you become the calm in the middle of it. You feel heartbreak, but don't lose your identity. You face betrayal and choose grace instead of revenge. You lose people and gain deeper clarity. You stop begging the world to understand you because you finally understood yourself. That's the unseen power Jung pointed to. When you are no longer fragmented inside, the world outside cannot fracture you. You are whole. You are awake. You are spiritual. And that makes you untouchable. 7. Final message. You are the mountain. You were never meant to be the storm. You were always the mountain. And those who awaken spiritually come to embody that truth, not through resistance, but through radical inner stillness. The soul does not roar to prove its power. It stands, silent and unbothered, while the world howls around it. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And that awakening isn't loud, it's profound. It's the quiet mastery of energy, of reaction, of presence. A spiritually awakened person does not react from wounds. They respond from awareness. They've trained their soul to become the observer, not the reactor. Life will still shake, storms will still come, and people will still misunderstand them. But their peace is no longer negotiable. Because their center no longer depends on what happens around them, it flows from what lives within. The awakened do not seek control over others, they seek mastery over self. They no longer exhaust their soul trying to fix chaos. Instead, they rise above it by not participating in it. They understand that protecting their peace doesn't require explanation. They are no longer offended by projections, accusations, or silence. Their energy no longer leaks into battles that don't feed their soul. They have remembered that every storm is temporary, but their presence is eternal. That's why nothing outside can truly touch them. They don't build walls. They build energetic boundaries that are so clear, so firm, so rooted, that anything not aligned simply fades away. Their soul doesn't armor up with pride. It glows with discernment. There is no need to convince, defend, or chase. What is meant for them flows effortlessly. What is not simply dissolves. In every moment, they choose stillness over reaction, intention over impulse, grace over chaos. They've stopped explaining their path to people who don't understand the language of the soul. Their life becomes a silent revolution, not of noise, but of depth. And that depth terrifies the shallow. That clarity confuses the chaotic. Their stillness feels like a threat to those addicted to drama, but they do not shrink to make others comfortable. They no longer apologize for their healing. They no longer dim their soul just to belong, because they've realized peace is not passive. It's the result of 1,000 inner battles no one ever saw. And that peace is what makes them untouchable. not because they are disconnected from the world, but because they are finally connected to themselves. The world will keep spinning, storms will still rise, but they, like the mountain, will remain, rooted in presence, aligned with soul, unmoved by noise. And that is their quiet power. To honor your inner stillness and strength, declare your truth. Comment below, "I am the mountain," to affirm your unshakable spirit and inspire others to rise in their own power. If this message speaks to you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. And so, as you begin to embody the calm within the storm, remember this: true spiritual awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about becoming untouchable within it. Carl Jung taught us that when we integrate the shadow and align with our inner truth, no external force can destabilize us. You are no longer reacting. You are responding with clarity, depth, and purpose. The storm may rage, but you remain unshaken. If this message resonated with your soul, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss the deep truths and powerful insights we share in upcoming videos. Until next time, walk in peace and remain grounded in your spiritual power. That exhaustion you feel, it's not your body, it's your shadow. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung, welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. Today, we're diving deep into a truth that most people overlook. Your exhaustion might not be physical, it might be spiritual. What if your burnout isn't just about doing too much, but about suppressing too much? According to Jung, the hidden cause may be your shadow self, the parts of you you've rejected, ignored, or silenced. This isn't just psychology, it's spiritual wisdom in action. Are you ready to face the part of you that's been crying out for attention beneath the surface? Drop a comment below. I'm ready to meet my shadow. And let's begin this journey of real healing and self-reclamation together. 1. Soul-level exhaustion isn't physical. It's psychological and spiritual. There is a kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. It's not in your muscles, not in your bones. It's rooted in your soul. You wake up tired, go through the day on autopilot, and collapse into bed, wondering why rest never feels like recovery. This isn't about overwork or lack of sleep. It's about something deeper, more invisible, and far more powerful. It's the fatigue that comes from living a life that isn't truly yours. Men are often expected to be steady, helpful, agreeable, and the one who holds everything together. So you learn to wear a mask. You suppress your irritation, swallow your anger, silence your needs. You show up for everyone but yourself. You become the dependable one, the strong one, the fixer. And while the world might thank you for that, your inner world begins to crack. That quiet ache behind your smile, that's not a weakness. That's the soul calling out from beneath the persona you've been forced to perform. Carl Jung called this the price of repressing the shadow of the hidden, rejected parts of ourselves that society tells us to bury. Your shadow holds everything you've been taught to hide: your rage, your desire, your grief, your needs. It's everything you couldn't be because you were too busy becoming what others needed. But what you repress doesn't disappear. It waits. It waits in the dark corners of your psyche, feeding on your silence, draining your energy. And one day, it speaks not in words, but in symptoms: burnout, numbness, emotional fatigue. That's not your body breaking down. That's your soul screaming through it. This kind of tiredness is spiritual. It's psychological. It's the cost of not living in alignment with who you truly are. Jung warned that the unconscious, if left unexamined, will run your life and you will call it fate. But what if the life you think you're meant to live is just a long reaction to what you were told was acceptable? What if the very things you pushed away, your boldness, your truth, your sadness, are the keys to your vitality? When you push your shadow into hiding, you don't become stronger, you become divided. And it is this internal split that slowly bleeds your energy dry. Healing begins not when you try to escape the exhaustion, but when you recognize its root. The answer is not more rest, it's more truth. It's not more time off, it's more inner alignment. The moment you stop pretending, stop performing, and start reclaiming the parts of yourself you once abandoned, that's when your energy begins to return. Not because life is easier, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. Your burnout isn't a flaw to fix, it's a message to hear. It's your soul reminding you that being endlessly helpful, agreeable, and pleasant at the cost of your truth is not sustainable. It's a quiet protest from the self you left behind. And the path to wholeness begins the moment you stop ignoring it. Because the real reason you're so tired, it's not your body, it's your shadow. And it's been waiting for you to come home. Have you ever felt tired in your soul? Not your body. If this kind of exhaustion speaks to you, share your experience in the comments so others know they're not alone. And if you're just beginning to explore this deeper kind of fatigue, simply comment, "I'm listening." Let's start this healing journey together. 2. Repression of the shadow drains psychic energy. Carl Jung taught that libido is not merely sexual energy, but the total psychic energy that fuels our ability to live, create, and connect with others. Every time you suppress your truth to avoid conflict, nod along to please others, or silence your needs to maintain harmony, you're not keeping the peace, you're spending energy. Not physical energy, but something far more precious, your soul's vitality. That fatigue you feel at the end of the day, the heaviness behind your smile, the emptiness even after a full night's rest. It may not be stress or burnout from work. It may be the cost of living a life too far from your real self. This is what happens when you live through your persona, the mask you wear to be agreeable, helpful, and socially acceptable. You start mistaking performance for presence. You play the role so well that even you forget it's a role. But the body remembers. And so does the shadow, the hidden part of you that holds your unmet needs, your anger, your instincts, your passion. The more you exile this part, the more exhausted you become. Because repression is not passive. It requires constant psychic labor. It's like holding a door shut with all your strength while something powerful keeps pushing from the other side. Eventually, your arms tremble. Your focus slips. You burn out, not from too much activity, but from too much pretending. Take a man like Jason, calm, dependable, always the one who smoothed things over. At work, he was the go-to guy for peacekeeping. At home, he never raised his voice. Everyone admired his composure. But deep down, Jason was numb. He couldn't feel joy, couldn't sleep without a glass of wine, and couldn't remember the last time he felt truly alive. That's because he was living in exile from his own soul. His libido, his life force, wasn't gone. It was trapped inside the shadow he'd locked away long ago in the name of being nice. Carl Jung warned that this is the most energy-intensive work a human being can do, to suppress the truth of who they are. And when the shadow can no longer speak through words, it speaks through the body, through burnout, illness, and chronic fatigue. These aren't weaknesses, they are signals. Signals that the price of your persona has become too high, that the energy you're spending on being liked is costing you the energy to be whole. The path forward is not about abandoning kindness or becoming selfish. It's about integration. It's about making space for your entire self, especially the parts you were told were too much, too angry, too sensitive, too honest. You do not need to dismantle your life to begin this healing. You only need to tell yourself the truth. Where do you feel the most drained? Who do you become when you're trying to be accepted? What part of you is always waiting for permission to speak? The answers to these questions are the keys to your vitality. The more honest you are, the more energy you reclaim. Your shadow is not the enemy. It's your buried power. And your exhaustion is not a flaw. It's a clue. 3. The nice person role is energetically unsustainable. You've spent so much of your life trying to be the good one, the kind one, the agreeable one, the peacemaker, and no one ever told you how spiritually expensive that role would become. Day after day, you monitor the emotional landscape of every room you walk into, adjusting yourself to make others comfortable. You anticipate their reactions before you speak. You avoid saying no because you don't want to hurt feelings, and you bury your frustration so deeply that you start forgetting it was ever there. But your body hasn't forgotten. Your soul hasn't forgotten. And the exhaustion you carry is not from your schedule. It's from the performance. Carl Jung warned that what we repress becomes our shadow, and what we repress will eventually find a way to express itself, usually through discomfort, burnout, or breakdown. So while you smile and nod, while you make everyone else feel safe, while you play the role of the emotionally responsible adult in every relationship, your inner world starts to crumble. You become like a beach ball held beneath the surface, colorful on the outside, but under incredible pressure. It takes so much effort to keep it submerged, and the moment you relax, it comes flying back up. That beach ball is your shadow. It's your anger, your truth, your unmet needs, your desire to be seen as more than just the strong one. And every time you push it back down, you lose spiritual energy you need to create, to heal, to grow. That's why you're tired, even after a full night of sleep. That's why you feel hollow, even when nothing is technically wrong. That's why you smile, while secretly wishing someone would just ask, "How are you really?" But no one asks, because you've trained the world to believe you're always fine. You've become the therapist, the fixer, the reliable one. And in the process, you've abandoned the parts of you that need to be held, to be listened to be angry, to be real. This isn't about being selfish. This is about being whole. Spiritual healing doesn't come from being more accommodating. It comes from integrating what you've rejected. You cannot truly awaken until you've embraced the parts of you that you've disowned. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That darkness is not evil. It's an unexpressed truth. When you finally acknowledge the part of you that's tired of being agreeable, That's resentful of always giving. That's screaming behind your smile. You begin to reclaim your soul. You begin to understand that your burnout isn't a weakness. It's wisdom. It's your shadow telling you that the nice person costume no longer fits, that the performance is over, and it's time to come home to yourself. The spiritual path is not about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about removing the mask and saying, "This is me, whole, messy, divine." And in that space of truth, something miraculous happens and your energy begins to return. Your clarity sharpens. Your intuition strengthens. Because when your shadow is no longer a prisoner, your soul becomes free. So let go of the idea that being kind means being silent, that being spiritual means being passive, and that being a good person means being drained. You are allowed to say no without guilt. You are allowed to disappoint others in order to remain in alignment with yourself. And you are allowed required to honor your shadow if you want to live a life of spiritual integrity and true vitality. Because the real burnout isn't caused by doing too much. It's caused by abandoning too much of yourself. Are you tired of playing the nice person at the cost of your own energy? If you're ready to reclaim your boundaries and speak your truth, comment below. I choose authenticity to begin your journey toward freedom and spiritual alignment. 4. Case study: Karen, the saint who's spiritually depleted. Karen's life looks admirable from the outside. She's warm, generous, always available. She never says no, never causes conflict, and never voices her true frustrations. But behind the praise and the polished surface is a soul that's quietly withering. She wakes up tired, not because she slept too little, but because her energy is bleeding from wounds she's been taught to ignore. Her fatigue is not physical, it's spiritual. This is not just tiredness. This is psychic depletion. Carl Jung warned that repressing the shadow self, the anger, the desires, the truth we've been conditioned to hide, is one of the most draining things a human can do. And that's exactly what's happening to Karen. Every time she smiles when she wants to scream, agrees when she wants to refuse, or gives when she has nothing left, she chips away at her vitality. Her exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being too little of who she truly is. The persona Jung said is the mask we wear to fit in. It's necessary but dangerous when over-identified with. Karen has become her mask. Her real self, the one with needs, instincts, and boundaries, has been silenced for so long that it only speaks now through fatigue, through the dull ache in her chest, through the brain fog that no supplement can fix. There is an energy leak within her, a spiritual hemorrhage that sleep cannot seal. And it's not unique to her. Many men live the same way. You work hard, provide, stay calm, keep the peace, but inside, something is dying. Not because you're weak, but because you're lying to yourself. You've cut off a part of your being, and that fragment the shadow demands to be felt. It doesn't care about politeness or success. It wants the truth. And until you face it, your soul will continue to cry out through your body. Karen's case is not about burnout from labor. It's about burnout from inauthenticity, from never allowing herself to be whole. She's not just tired, she's spiritually malnourished. Her shadow has become louder, not through words, but through symptoms. Her life is proof that ignoring the shadow doesn't make it disappear. It just changes the way it speaks. Through her story, we see a truth many avoid, that sometimes the most exhausting thing we do is pretend. Healing doesn't begin with more sleep, another vacation, or better time management. It begins with a reckoning, with asking yourself, where have I betrayed my own soul to be who the world wanted me to be? That question is the beginning of reclaiming your power. Because the soul cannot thrive in hiding. It only breathes in truth. 5. Fatigue is a sacred signal, not a flaw. Your exhaustion is not a weakness. It is sacred intelligence speaking through your body. It's not laziness, not failure, not some flaw in your personality. It is your soul signaling that something is profoundly off course. And as Carl Jung warned, what you suppress doesn't disappear. It becomes the shadow. That shadow is not just a metaphor. It's the container where your unspoken anger, buried needs, and silenced truth live. Quietly consuming your energy every day, you pretend they're not there. The more you smile through pain, say yes when you mean no, or silence your boundaries to be liked or accepted, the more you create a split inside yourself, and that inner split demands enormous energy to maintain. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep enough, but because you've spent years managing two versions of yourself, the one you present to the world and the one hidden in the dark, asking to be seen. There's a man who wakes up every morning, puts on a suit, kisses his kids, and drives to work with a hollow ache in his chest. Everyone says he's dependable, kind, the guy you can count on, but no one sees how crushed he feels inside. He doesn't know why he snaps at small things, or why joy feels like a distant memory. He thinks maybe he just needs a vacation, but what he really needs is integration. His burnout is not about overwork, it's about oversuppression. His soul is asking for truth, for permission to feel, for space to finally be honest. And until he gives that to himself, no amount of rest will bring him peace. Carl Jung made it clear, the shadow is not evil. It's simply the part of you you've not yet made conscious. And repressing it is one of the most exhausting things a human being can do. When you push away your anger, your grief, your desires, they don't leave. They live underground, pulling at your energy like invisible weights. This is why so many people feel tired all the time and can't explain it. Because they're not just tired, they're divided. And division creates suffering. But healing begins when you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what truth am I afraid to face? Your burnout is a message, not a malfunction. It's your shadow asking you to stop performing, to stop hiding, to stop sacrificing your real self for an image that pleases others. You don't need to become someone else. You need to become whole. And that begins by letting yourself feel what you feel, need what you need, and speak what you've been too afraid to say. Your exhaustion is not the enemy. It's the doorway. It's the threshold between the false self and the true self. Let it guide you. Let it soften you. Let it lead you back to the places within that you once abandoned. As Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Don't be one of them. The real cure for burnout is not more sleep, it's more truth. Let your soul rest by letting it speak. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What is your body trying to tell you right now? Let's honor our exhaustion, not as failure, but as sacred guidance on the path of spiritual awakening. 6. 3 core messages from your shadow. Through exhaustion, unexpressed anger is not just an emotional issue, it is a spiritual weight. Every time you silence your rage to appear agreeable, every time you smile while your boundaries are being violated, you're using an immense amount of psychic energy to suppress what needs to be acknowledged. Carl Jung warned us that what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. When you hold in your anger, it doesn't disappear. It transforms into exhaustion. It becomes chronic fatigue, irritation, restlessness, and even depression. It's like pressing down on a spring all day eventually. Your entire being tires from the force of resistance. Your burnout isn't laziness or weakness. It's the spiritual cost of denying a part of yourself that demands to be heard. And it doesn't stop there. Your soul has emotional and spiritual needs, just like your body needs food. If you're constantly pouring into others, showing up for everyone else, offering kindness and strength while never receiving the same for yourself, you will slowly deplete. Your soul needs solitude, silence, inspiration, and joy to thrive. Without these, you experience what can only be described as spiritual malnutrition. The symptoms are subtle. You stop laughing. You stop dreaming. You lose interest in things that once lit you up. The inner world begins to fade, replaced by obligation and performance. You forget the last time you created for fun, rested without guilt, or felt truly alive. Your spirit, once vibrant, becomes weary, not because you are broken, but because you are spiritually starved. The third and most devastating root of this deep exhaustion is living in misalignment with your true self. When your life is dictated by others' opinions, when you suppress your own voice to win approval, when your days are filled with roles you never chose, your soul begins to rebel. This rebellion doesn't look like fire and chaos. It shows up as numbness, as fatigue that won't go away, as a sense of drifting through life, never quite arriving anywhere. You feel like you're swimming against the current of your own being. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And when you live inauthentically, when you betray yourself just to be accepted, your soul sends signals. Burnout is one of those signals. It is not your body giving up. It is your spirit screaming that something is deeply wrong. This is not just mental or emotional exhaustion. It is a spiritual collapse. The shadow self, everything you've rejected, hidden, or disowned, isn't trying to ruin you. It is trying to wake you up. It speaks through weariness, through the weight in your chest, through the tears that rise for no reason. Integration is the path to healing. You must stop hiding from the parts of yourself you were taught to fear, because in truth, they hold the very energy, creativity, and power you've been missing. You are not broken. You are spiritually imbalanced from pretending too long. And the only way back is through honest self-inquiry and radical alignment with your soul. Let the shadow speak. Let your spirit breathe again. 7. 3 transformative practices to begin healing. The exhaustion you feel is not laziness, and it's not something you can fix with just a good night's sleep. It's deeper than that. It's the ache of your soul quietly asking you to stop pretending. You've spent years being the strong one, the dependable one, the man who doesn't complain. But beneath that calm exterior is a storm of unmet needs, unspoken truths, and a shadow you've worked tirelessly to suppress. Carl Jung warned us that what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. And for many men, this resistance becomes the root of burnout, Not just a tired body, but a tired identity. Healing starts not with doing more, but with remembering who you are beneath the noise. The first practice that initiates this healing is the sigh of surrender, a double inhale followed by a long, slow exhale while silently saying, "I surrender. I am ready to listen." It's not just a breath, it's a signal to your nervous system that the war within is ending. Your body, which has carried so much tension and false strength, finally gets to soften, to release the armor you've worn for too long. And in that moment of breath, your soul speaks not through words, but through relief. This is followed by the practice of journaling to your fatigue, where you sit with your exhaustion not as a weakness to push through, but as a wise messenger. Write to it. Ask questions like, "What are you trying to protect me from?" Or, "What have I been ignoring?" Let it speak back without censorship. This isn't about crafting perfect sentences. It's about creating a dialogue with the part of you that has been silenced in your pursuit of being strong. You'll be surprised what your soul reveals when given permission to speak without judgment. The third practice is guilt-free rest, which may sound simple, but for many men, it's the hardest. Rest has been tied to guilt, to laziness, to failure. But true rest, the kind that restores your soul, is not a break from productivity. It's an act of remembrance. When you schedule time to do absolutely nothing, not to recover for more hustle, but because your soul deserves space to breathe, you are declaring to the world that your worth is not tied to your output. You are not a machine. You are not a checklist. You are a soul in a human body, and that soul needs stillness. These practices are not luxuries. They are acts of courage. In a society that celebrates burnout as a badge of honor, choosing to breathe, to write, and to rest becomes a radical return to self. And in that return, you'll find a man who is no longer chasing validation or hiding his pain. You'll find someone grounded, awake, and no longer ruled by the shadow he once feared. The exhaustion doesn't disappear overnight, but when you stop running from it and start listening to it, you begin to shift. You stop surviving and start remembering. And that remembrance is where the soul finally begins to heal. As we explore these 3 transformative healing practices, take a moment to honor your own journey. Your presence here is a sign that you're ready to listen to your body, speak to your soul, and rest without guilt. If you're committed to this path of deep self-care, comment below, "I am ready to heal from within," as a declaration of your inner shift. Let this be your first step toward wholeness. 8. Shadow work begins with listening, not fighting. You think you're just tired, but no amount of sleep seems to help. You wake up drained, carry a heaviness you can't explain, and tell yourself to push through. But this exhaustion isn't physical, it's spiritual. Carl Jung warned that the greatest drain on our energy doesn't come from work or effort. It comes from denying who we are. Shadow work begins not with fixing or fighting, but with listening. Listening to the quiet ache that says you've been showing up for everyone but yourself. Listening to the sighs you suppress, the anger you swallow, the needs you minimize. That bone-deep tiredness is not laziness. It's the consequence of living in a way that's misaligned with your soul. And the moment you stop resisting it and begin listening is the moment you reclaim your power. When you give yourself permission to rest, to feel, to say no, The energy you once used to suppress yourself becomes available for living more authentically. Karen used to be the nice one, helpful, agreeable, always available. But beneath her smile was a soul worn thin. Her body spoke first. Tension, fatigue, disinterest. She thought she just needed a vacation, but what she really needed was the truth. So she paused. She stopped volunteering on autopilot. She let silence fill the space where guilt used to speak. She picked up her old guitar and began playing again, not for anyone, just for herself. She wrote down her feelings, even the uncomfortable ones. She stopped saying yes when her body whispered no. Slowly, the joy returned. Not the kind you fake in public, but the kind that sneaks up on you when you're finally free. Her kindness didn't disappear. It deepened. It wasn't about obligation anymore. It came from alignment, from the soul. That's what Carl Jung meant by integration. Not perfection, but wholeness. The truth is, burnout is the receipt for abandoning yourself. Every time you perform instead of express, agree instead of feel, please instead of honor, you pay in energy. And eventually, the cost is too high. So you renegotiate. You write a new contract with your life. My needs are valid, my rest is sacred, and I will not sacrifice myself to be understood. This isn't a quick fix. It's a slow unraveling of the masks you wear. It's choosing honesty over approval, peace over performance, soul over survival. And it begins now. Not with a resolution, but with one sacred choice. The sigh, the journal, or the rest. One breath that says, I am here. One truth on paper that says, this is how I feel. One quiet moment that says, I don't need to earn this pause. That's how the healing begins, not with force, but with presence. The more you listen, the more energy returns. Not energy to hustle, but to be. That's the true cure for burnout. To stop abandoning yourself and to remember the life you were meant to live. As we've explored today, the exhaustion you feel might not just be physical. It could be your shadow self calling out for your attention. Carl Jung reminds us that what we repress does not disappear. It only grows heavier in the dark. True healing begins when you stop running from yourself and start listening to the parts you've ignored. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. What part of you have you silenced for too long? If you found value in this video, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights like this. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next awakening. Your journey inward is the most powerful journey of all. Keep walking it with courage